They anticipated a typical, placid excursion on the waterway, a leisurely kayak outing, some light-hearted banter among companions. However, as their vessel neared a quiescent meander concealed by vegetation, their circumstances altered dramatically. There, barely clinging to life in the mire, lay a German shepherd, restrained by a chain, injured, and gazing through them as if having witnessed horrors no creature should endure. What they were then unaware of was that this was not merely a rescue operation. It was the unraveling of a secret someone had endeavored to permanently conceal, and the ordeal that Canine had undergone was not yet concluded. It was intended to be merely another destination on their summer journey. 3 enduring companions navigating the Snake River in a remote part of Idaho at a leisurely pace, seeking only natural beauty and tranquility. Garrett, the meticulous organizer. Noah, the wry one. Luis, the compassionate individual with a camera perpetually slung around his neck. They were not adventurers, merely 3 individuals taking a week's respite from work pressures and commitments. Yet, life does not invariably announce its disruptions before forcefully intervening. As their kayaks navigated a moss-laden curve bordered by dense undergrowth and mature trees, Garrett signaled for the others to pause. An incongruity was present. The gentle wind had ceased, the avian life had fallen silent. And then they observed him. Positioned just beyond the river's edge, partially obscured by moist foliage and shadows, lay a canine. A German shepherd, sizable, covered in mud, bleeding, coiled tightly like a moribund secret. A corroded, harsh chain encircled his neck, its opposite extremity embedded in the earth as though to permanently restrain him. His respiration was shallow, his gaze devoid of entreaty. Vacant, unblinking, yet containing an element that caused Luis to drop his photographic device. The 3 men hastily exited their kayaks. Garrett, whose hands typically quivered when procuring coffee, advanced on all 4s initially. The shepherd neither growled nor recoiled, merely emitting a sound so faint it resembled a sigh. Garrett extended his hand gradually, murmuring incoherent phrases. As he drew nearer, more particulars became apparent. A profound laceration along its flank, paws inflamed and fissured, encrusted with dried blood and grime. The dog was injured but not deceased, a fact that intensified the situation. He had dragged himself there, struggled to attain this location. Then Luis detected something further. Scratch marks in the soil, lines repeatedly inscribed in the identical spot. Not haphazard, but intentional, faint, yet forming a rudimentary emblem, possibly a triangle or an arrow. It lacked coherence, but nothing in this instant did. Noah finally broke the silence, his voice constricted. He was attempting to communicate something, perhaps to anyone, that he had not surrendered. The realization struck them all simultaneously. This dog was not merely a casualty of neglect. He had eluded something, endured something, reached the river's edge not to perish, but perhaps to be discovered. Garrett retrieved his mobile phone, his fingers trembling, and contacted the nearest veterinary practice he could locate via a search engine. An hour's distance, yet each second felt like a gamble. Would he survive? As they carefully placed him in the rear of their sport utility vehicle, Echo, as they would subsequently name him, released a single gentle exhalation, not of relief, nor of pain, but something more profound. As if within that battered, quivering form resided a spirit not yet prepared to yield. And though they were then unaware, this was not the conclusion of Echo's struggle. It was merely its inception. The journey to the closest veterinary facility felt like a desperate attempt to outpace an encroaching stillness. Echo, yes, they had already begun to call him that, lay inert in the rear seat, his respiration slow and shallow, his eyes partially closed but still surveying his surroundings like a soldier too weary to offer a salute. Garrett, who had never possessed even a pet fish, held Echo's paw for the entire duration of the trip. Luis drove, his knuckles blanched, while Noah persistently checked the GPS as if it might miraculously accelerate their progress. The roads meandered through pine woodlands and agricultural lands, but none of the scenery held any significance anymore. The sole concern was whether this dog, this enigma, would still be breathing when they arrived at the clinic's parking area. Dr. Lena Monroe greeted them at the entrance, a pragmatic woman with gentle eyes and footwear that appeared to have weathered more tempests than catered to fashion. She acted without delay. Room 3. Immediately. Her hands moved swiftly, her inquiries even more so. What transpired? Where did you locate him? Did he consume anything? Any apparent tics? The young men provided faltering responses, but she did not pause. The only action Echo took was to lift his head once when she touched the chain still secured around his neck. An hour elapsed with agonizing slowness. At last, Lena came out, removing bloodied gloves, her expression inscrutable. He's stable, just barely. You brought him here in the nick of time. A surge of relief washed over them, but it receded even more forcefully when she continued, there's more. He's not just injured, he's been repeatedly harmed. He has old fractures, scars, a partially healed burn on his side, and this. She displayed a close-up photograph taken of Echo's shoulder, revealing faint ink barely discernible beneath matted fur, a tattoo, governmental in style, faded yet unmistakable. That's not a pet marking. That's a K9 ID. They stood in silence as if an entirely new reality had just fractured beneath them. It elucidated so much, why Echo recoiled at raised voices yet refrained from growling, why he seemed to immobilize each time a door creaked, why he observed them all not with apprehension but with scrutiny, assessing them, interpreting their motives. He was not a domestic animal, he was trained, disciplined, and now utterly alone. That evening they resolved to alternate staying with him at the facility. Luis took the initial watch. He brought a sleeping bag and positioned himself beside Echo, reading from an aged travel periodical merely to break the silence. Around midnight, Echo stirred, his ears alert. He gazed at the window for a continuous 10 minutes, motionless. Then he emitted a low, steady growl, his eyes unblinking. Yet the window revealed nothing, only darkness. Luis remained awake throughout the night. By dawn, Echo's respiration was more regular, though he still did not stand. Lena indicated he would require weeks, possibly months, of recuperation. Yet in her tone there was an additional element, respect. Whatever he has endured, she remarked, gently stroking his fur, he endured it for a purpose. Canines do not persevere with such tenacity unless they are striving to return to something. And just like that, the entire situation shifted. This was no longer merely about assisting an injured creature, it was about discovering what, or whom, he had been forced to leave. After 2 days of continuous attention, Echo's respiration had become more regular, and his eyes, though still showing fatigue, no longer appeared lifeless. The young men took turns attending to him, like field medics in a conflict. Garrett would whisper passages from podcasts, Luis would read excerpts from an old travel journal, and Noah, naturally, played subdued electronic music on his phone, asserting even canines appreciate a relaxed atmosphere. Yet, a transformation was occurring, not solely within Echo, but within all three of them. This dog was not merely recuperating, he was revealing something, gradually, silently. Noah, ever the technologically inclined individual, resolved to share Echo's plight on a local Facebook group for dog enthusiasts. He posted an image of Echo resting beneath a coverlet at the veterinary clinic, accompanied by a straightforward entreaty, "We discovered him restrained by the waterway, near death. The veterinarian suspects he may have been AK-9. Does anyone identify him?" He anticipated little response, perhaps a few disseminations, some expressions of sympathy, a charitable contribution or two. What he did not foresee was a confidential communication from an anonymous profile. No image, no connections, merely 5 words. "That's not just any dog." Noah blinked. Then, the subsequent message struck with force. "Walk away. It's not your fight." He showed the others. They froze. A chill permeated the room like a slow, insidious leak of dread. Was this some bizarre prank? Or someone who genuinely knew Echo's identity? Still unsettled, they decided to clear their heads and take Echo, now able to limp a few feet with support, for a short walk. The late afternoon sun cut through the clouds like a shy spotlight. Lena had given them permission to use the back field behind the clinic, an open patch near a line of dense trees. But Echo didn't want to walk the trail. He tugged toward the far corner, an area half covered in tall grass and dead leaves. Suddenly, he stopped. His nose hit the ground, and then he began digging fast, focused like he knew what was buried there. Garrett knelt to help, hands brushing away layers of dirt. A flash of metal caught the light. They unearthed a small, half-buried dog tag, weathered, worn, and cold. It read, TW Unit 47A. Their stomachs dropped. Noah's voice came out thin. "TW, Travis Wyatt." Lena, who had just arrived, called out from the building and confirmed it. Travis Wyatt, a former officer, K-9 handler, disappeared 2 years ago in a botched undercover operation during a narcotics investigation. Presumed dead, but his body never found. Echo stood still, his gaze locked on that tag, unmoving. Garrett said softly, "You were his dog, weren't you?" Echo didn't respond, but his tail flicked just once. By nightfall, Dr. Lena had run the tag number through an old law enforcement database. The match was clear. Echo wasn't his real name. He had once been registered as Shadow, assigned to Officer Travis Wyatt. And now they knew. This dog hadn't just escaped abuse. He had escaped something organized, something covered up, something dangerous. Echo, or Shadow, had made it to that riverbank not to die, but to lead someone back to a truth that someone else had tried to bury. Whatever that symbol scratched into the dirt was, it wasn't just a cry for help. It was a map, and someone out there didn't want it followed. Certain recollections do not seek consent. They invade the consciousness like tempests, unbidden and persistent. Echo, still mending, still mute, was starting to remember. It commenced that evening, shortly after midnight. Garrett had dozed off in the seat beside him, head reclined, a gentle snore emanating. The chamber was quiet, save for the drone of the clinic's apparatus. Then Echo started, not a mere twitch, but an electric convulsion. His paws moved as if in motion, teeth bared in a dream only he perceived. His respiration accelerated, ears flattened. He whimpered, a shrill, urgent sound incongruous with the stoic canine they had come to know. Luis, observing from the opposite side of the partition, hurried in. He crouched next to the dog, murmuring its name. Echo, Shadow, both. The dog did not respond, not initially. Then, abruptly, Echo's eyes sprang open, wild, unfocused. He was no longer in the clinic. He was in an entirely different place. And in that immobilized gaze, Luis perceived it. Fear, not of suffering, but of remembrance. Flash. Flames lapped at the borders of a storage facility. Flash. The report of firearms. Men shouting. Travis's voice, firm, loud, yet alarmed. Shadow, depart. Evacuate this location. The burst of a signal flare. Another detonation. Then, obscurity. Echo's body tensed as if his muscles recalled the force before his mind registered it. Luis remained by his side, speaking softly, stroking his fur. After minutes that seemed like an eternity, Echo fully relapsed into slumber, his chest rising and falling in prolonged, erratic undulations. That was the evening Luis comprehended an irrefutable fact. This canine was not merely enduring injuries. He was enduring a conflict. The subsequent morning, Dr. Lena corroborated it. This degree of psychological distress, it's not solely physical, she stated, perusing her records. He exhibits all the indicators of PTSD. Just as humans do, loud noises, intrusive recollections, heightened vigilance. Whatever transpired during that operation, it continues to affect him. Noah, who had been researching Travis Wyatt on the internet, entered with a collection of printed materials and 2 containers of black coffee. There is a discrepancy in the timeline, he remarked, placing the documents on the surface. The accounts state Travis perished 2 years prior in an undercover operation, yet there are no images from the location, no postmortem examination. Merely a single police memorandum indicating he was lost in action and declared deceased 6 months thereafter. And here is the crucial detail: his badge was never retrieved. Garrett glanced upwards. So, what is your implication? My implication is that perhaps Travis never actually died. Or perhaps an individual did not wish for anyone to investigate too thoroughly into the circumstances of his disappearance. A moment of quiet. Then Echo, who had been reclining in the corner, gradually rose. For the initial instance since the riverbank, he took 3 deliberate paces towards Garrett, sat, and rested his head on Garrett's leg. No whimpering, no growl, merely a silent connection. Luis observed, astounded. It's as if he comprehends our belief in him now. From that juncture, everything altered. The 3 companions were no longer mere sightseers, they were now deeply involved. Whatever had befallen Echo Shadow was not solely Echo's affliction, it was a connecting thread and they had only just begun to unravel it. And far away, another party was also aware of this. The morning following Echo's intrusive memory, an oppressive atmosphere prevailed as if the very air anticipated an impending event. Garrett asserted he observed a dark SUV pass the clinic twice within a 10-minute span. Noah attempted to dismiss it with a jest about local eccentrics performing the world's most leisurely drive-by, but Luis did not crack a smile, nor did any of them. They could not dispel the sensation that they were not merely inadvertently entering a perilous situation, they were being observed as they walked directly into it. And then the cautionary signals intensified. When they exited to their SUV to procure breakfast, they discovered every tire had been cleanly punctured. No message, no defacement, merely precise incisions and quietude, the sort of quietude that communicates threats with fluency. Garrett inspected the vicinity. Noah paced, muttering to himself. Luis stared directly at the vacant roadway, his gaze narrowing. Whoever is responsible, they are not merely attempting to frighten us, he stated. They intend for us to cease. Yet, that was not the incident that shattered the tranquility. That occurred later that evening, shortly past 2 a.m. Echo, still recuperating in the clinic's primary recovery chamber, emitted an abrupt, profound bark, then another, followed by a subdued, visceral snarl that felt too innate to disregard. Luis, who had again undertaken the late watch, sprang upright from his cot. Echo was confronting the clinic's front window, his body rigid, ears focused. Luis hurried to the window coverings. Nothing, merely night, wind, and shadows until he perceived it. Across the thoroughfare, concealed by a group of trees, stood a man in a dark overcoat, motionless, merely observing. Luis fumbled for his phone, attempting to enlarge the image of the figure with his camera, but the man pivoted and vanished into the darkness as if consumed by the trees. When law enforcement arrived 20 minutes later, there was no sign, no footprints, no nearby vehicle, just an empty parking area and the customary "we will investigate" assurances. The following morning, Lena arrived earlier than her usual time. The young men recounted everything: the tires, the man, the SUV, the messages. She remained composed. Instead, she proceeded to her rear office, secured the door, and came back holding a brown envelope. This arrived in the mail yesterday, she stated. No sender's address. Inside was a hazy black and white photograph of Echo, taken from a distance, and inscribed at the bottom in red ink was a single sentence. Return the dog. You have no idea what you're digging into. The room descended into silence. It was no longer merely an enigma, it was a menace. Yet Echo Shadow remained unfazed. Indeed, that very evening when Garrett entered the room wearing his jacket, Echo arose. He advanced with a limp, pressing his nose against Garrett's leg as if aware it was time to depart. Garrett glanced downwards, then towards the others. He does not wish to conceal himself. He desires for us to discover whatever this pertains to. Luis affirmed with a nod. Then we shall discover it and we shall conclude it. Externally, the sky became somber, the wind intensified. The world, it appeared, was inclining to hearken. They now possessed a name: Travis Wyatt, officer, K9 handler, and, contingent upon the informant, either a tragic victim of a compromised operation or the central figure in a deliberately altered narrative. Garrett sat hunched over his laptop as if attempting to manipulate time itself. Luis meticulously examined local news archives while Noah crafted the type of online posts that attract either conspiracy adherents or individuals with insider information. The further they probed, the more convoluted the situation appeared. According to the official police account, Travis had vanished during a narcotics operation involving an informant and a compromised task force. The investigation had been closed following an internal affairs inquiry, but censored details suggested Travis had been independently gathering evidence against his own colleagues. His final communications were flagged for inconsistencies. One was dispatched 3 hours after he was officially declared deceased. Another remained unopened, addressed to a now-retired lieutenant who had maintained silence ever since. And then there was the matter of the badge, never recovered. Garrett leaned back in his seat. It's not merely that he disappeared, he remarked. It's the swiftness with which they sought to suppress discussion about it. It's as if they erased him. Luis stood by the window, arms folded. But they couldn't erase Echo. That's their error. Dr. Lena, now as deeply involved as the young men, utilized a contact. A former associate of hers, retired Sheriff Clay Danner, retained access to the outdated system. When she recounted the story to him, he remained silent for an extended period. Then, in a tone tinged with sorrow, he murmured, I recall Wyatt. He possessed an integrity that proved detrimental. He mentioned being trailed, claimed to possess documents capable of exposing a significant issue. I advised him to exercise caution. That was our final conversation. However, Clay possessed one additional item, an investigation folder Wyatt had surreptitiously given him mere days prior to his disappearance. Within were hastily written names, dates, and a single phrase that stood out conspicuously: "They're not cartel, they're us." And suddenly comprehension dawned. Echo had not merely been a canine in an unfortunate situation, he had been part of a two-member unit endeavoring to reveal something entrenched within the very system designed to safeguard the populace. Luis slowly shook his head. He wasn't just pursued, he was betrayed. But the question persisted: if Travis had been silenced, what became of the files he had been assembling? Where had they vanished? And why did someone believe Echo also needed to disappear? That evening, Echo once more moved with a clear sense of direction. He walked to the entrance, glanced back, and waited. It was not arbitrary, he possessed knowledge. Garrett seized his outerwear. Wherever he is proceeding, we will accompany him. And thus, in a vehicle with partially functional brakes and a container filled with protein supplements, they embarked. The route was extensive, unsealed, and largely overlooked. Yet the canine beside them recalled every bend. This was no longer merely an enigma, it was a mission. Their precise destination was unknown to them, yet Echo clearly knew the way. This much was evident. They trailed him for numerous miles into the Sawtooth National Forest, beyond roadways devoid of signage, through meandering paths only the wind seemed to recall. The further they progressed, the more profound the quietude became, as if nature itself were suppressing its breath. By mid-afternoon, Echo emitted a single bark and veered sharply from the path, guiding them into a dense, untouched thicket. What lay ahead was not indicated on any map. Concealed beneath strata of pine and thorny bushes was a diminutive, weather-beaten cabin, scarcely discernible until one was within 10 feet of it. Its roof drooped, its walls bore the scars of time and tempests, yet an animate quality pervaded it. Echo showed no reluctance. He advanced towards the main entrance, his tail rigid, head held high. Luis reached for the handle, which groaned open like a straining vertebrae. Inside, the atmosphere was heavy with dust, the kind that imbues time with a palpable weight. Yet, in the corner lay a simple bed, a corroded heating unit, an aged military carryall, and on the wall, faintly inscribed into the timber, were the initials TWW. Garrett's breath caught. They were not merely in any cabin, they had discovered Travis Wyatt's final refuge. Luis approached a small cupboard, forced it open, and there it lay, a weathered journal. The cover was cracked, its pages curled at the edges, yet the words within were strikingly clear. Entry after entry penned in sharp, urgent ink, descriptions of informants, details of officers accepting illicit payments, names, dates, transactions, a comprehensive case file. Travis had been meticulously documenting everything. And then the entries ceased. The final one was different, smudged, hurried, written as if by someone uncertain of their future. If you're reading this, they found me. Echo is the only one who knows. I had to send him away. They were closing in fast. If I don't make it, let him live. Let him be free. Noah read the concluding sentence aloud, and the ensuing silence felt sacred. Echo, now positioned at the journal's edge, stared at the floor, motionless. Then slowly, he nudged the book with his nose and lay down beside it as if guarding not just a memory but a promise. That instant profoundly affected them. Garrett knelt and murmured he wasn't merely fleeing. He carried this burden throughout. They gathered the journal, the documents, and Travis's badge, which was concealed in a shoebox near the heater. On the reverse of the badge, etched by hand, were the words, "He's more than a dog. He's my truth." The young men departed from the cabin transformed. What had commenced as an accidental encounter on a riverbank had evolved into something far more significant, an act of preserving a legacy. Travis may have vanished, but his voice endured through the unwavering loyalty of a companion who refused to forget. And now Echo was no longer alone. By the time they emerged from the woods, their objective was no longer shrouded in mystery, it had become a solemn duty. The journal, the badge, the names, it was sufficient to expose everything Travis Wyatt had perished safeguarding. Dr. Lena acted without delay. She reached out to a dependable federal agent she knew from her time in the military, an individual who owed her more than a single favor. Within 48 hours, a discreet yet potent investigation commenced. There were no public announcements, no blaring sirens, just methodical pressure. Doors were opened, records were retrieved, individuals were interrogated, and for the initial instance in 2 years, Travis Wyatt's name resonated within the corridors of justice. Yet, this segment of the narrative centered not on the impropriety but on Echo. Once a survivor, then a witness, now an emblem. A public commemoration was organized at the town's central plaza. It lacked ostentation, no marble effigies or sensational orations, merely a timber platform, several rows of collapsible seats, and a display of Travis's badge and journal beneath an American flag. Luis, Garrett, and Noah occupied the foremost row. Lena stood immediately behind them, and at her side, seated calmly in a new black collar adorned with Travis's silver badge, was Echo, no longer an injured creature evading phantoms, but a dignified spirit occupying the prominence his story had merited. The mayor delivered remarks, followed by the sheriff. Yet the assembly remained unmoved until the concluding words were uttered. He didn't just survive. He remembered. He led them back. He refused to let us forget. As the applause subsided, Echo advanced a few deliberate paces and positioned himself beneath the flag, his gaze directed towards the attendees as if still seeking someone, or perhaps overseeing them all. Following the ceremony, a final determination remained. Echo required a permanent residence. Garrett, who once felt ill-equipped for even minor responsibilities, spoke first. He selected us. He is already home. Luis and Noah affirmed with nods. There was no contention, only consensus. Collectively, the three established Echo's Watch, a charitable organization devoted to the welfare of retired K-9s, providing them with homes, recuperation, and recognition. What commenced as a holiday had evolved into a mission. One existence, one K-9 had reshaped theirs. In the concluding image, Echo is seated by the lake near the cabin. The sun suffuses the water with a golden hue. A gentle breeze rustles the trees. Garrett stands in proximity, throwing a piece of wood that Echo disregards. Instead, Echo gazes ahead, still proud, vigilant. Not because he anticipates peril, but because he safeguards tranquility. Some canines pursue playthings. Echo pursued justice. And ultimately, he delivered something far more potent than mere solutions.